people by the looks of it in here. And so we've started recording. Thank you so much. So like I said, we're going to start.
I get points with. I just get points for that. I just log in and it's all. So.
And yeah, thanks again. We've got those mics happening, but it doesn't seem to be an issue for most people. So here's what I'd like you to do, folks. I really want to know a little bit about you before we kick off this hour together, because I am really, really willing to go down the sort of conversation pathways that you would like to have around AI in your different organizations. So if you could grab your smartphone, and we did test this a minute ago, so it should work for everybody. You can go to menti.com, especially if you've got like the second screen thing happening like I have. Go to menti.com and type in that number. I'm sure most of you have done a Mentimeter or something similar before. So what's your main role or title in your organization? You could remember, you can make something up. Like if you want to put wizard, that's totally fine. I won't hold it against you. But if you can put your actual title here, that'd be great, so that we can see the sort of range of people. Someone took the, yep, well done. Someone said wizard. And yeah, if you could pop in here your title, just so we know what sort of perspective you're bringing to this conversation. So it's really important. So whenever I've done these in the last, I've only started doing this in the last couple of months at conferences and different places where it's really actually important, I think, not just to turn to the person next to you, but just to see who is in the room taking a part in this conversation. So thank you so much for popping those ideas in, and have a scroll through as well if you're able to scroll through those responses so that you can actually see the other people in the room. So I'll give that another 10 seconds because we've got most of the people in there, and of course taking out a couple of people like myself who may not hop in ourselves. Let's see. So we've got, educators in the room, we've got analysts in the room, we've got project managers in the room, we've got trainers, we've got people clearly from different types of organizations like companies and RTOs, which I know are companies as well, but you know what I mean. We might have some industry partners here as well. Teacher, silver of ugly problems, solver maybe of ugly problems. I get you, I hear you. And help desk. All right. Thank you so much for hopping in there and doing that. Great. Thank you. So next question for you really quickly. Have those smartphones ready? It should have changed on your smartphone, by the way. You shouldn't have to do anything else. You should just be able to go in. How often do you already use AI tools or apps? And that could be for personal or professional reasons. I just mean, how often do you intentionally go in and use something like ChatGPT? Let's see, out of our 30-ish people who are in this survey, what we might come back with. So if you could tap away at which of those options you feel is most appropriate, every day or frequently, a few times a week, once or twice a month, or never. As you're finishing that off, it seems like every day and frequently is winning. It may, I'm stereotyping, but you may be faster tappers than the other people in the group. But the important thing is, I think whenever I've worked with schools or other organizations, we have to recognize that there are, even though it's 2026, this technology's been around for 4 years, there are still highly professional people who have not used these tools in any sort of meaningful way. They might not have been supported to do so or led to do so in a productive way, and they're part of this conversation and have to be. So thank you so much. You've got a few more seconds to pop in there, but have a look at that. Every day and frequently winning quite clearly. There's no prize, but you win. And a few times a week coming up after that. So most of the people in the group have some regular engagement with this, but I see you and I hear you, the never people. So I will walk through a couple of basics, which actually the everyday frequently people might be interested in as well in a few minutes. Okay, next question. Which AI tools and platforms do you use now? This isn't a spelling test. So if you put a space between chat and GPT, I'm not going to have a go with you. And Leanne, the Menti code is in the right-hand side of the screen. So hopefully if you can see the shared screen, you should be able to see that code on the right-hand side, or just hop straight into the QR code again. So we've got Copilot, ChatGPT, lots of chat space GPTs, and Co-Pilot and all sorts of things. So obviously these sorts of word clouds, I know most of you know this already, but for those of you who might not have seen this kind of word cloud, it makes the more frequent responses larger and more central to the diagram so that you can quickly see which ones are more frequently mentioned. But we can see here that we've got Copilot, which is the Microsoft product. We've got ChatGPT from OpenAI. We've got Claude there from Anthropic. We do have a couple of Geminis, I think, in the room. Perplexity is another one as well. So if you have not heard of any of these terms, I highly recommend you take a screenshot right now of this word cloud and go and have a look a little bit later. So you can get your phones out and take a photo if you want to. You can take a screenshot and have a look later. But if you haven't heard of some of these tools, might be worth a little explore. And one of these, I'm sure, and most of you probably, it would be Copilot, I would suggest. Most of you have an organizational account access into these tools, and that's what I call the safe zone. So we'll come back to that in a little while as well. All right. Next question. We'll only spend another minute or so on this. Does your school or organization have a clear, consistent approach to AI for all stakeholders? I mean, everyone in the building or buildings is on the same page about AI. Whether you agree with that position or not, doesn't matter. I just mean, does everyone have the same understanding of what AI's role is in your organization or not? Or if you're not sure, just pop it in there. All right, so we've got 20-something% yes, 15% not sure, 60% no. Interesting. Okay. So we've got frameworks out there. We've got guidelines in different industries and including in education, both school, vet, and other tertiary areas. All right, and yet we've got over 70% saying that they're no or not sure about the approach to AI in their organization, which basically means that it's kind of on you to maintain some responsible use. And that's what we're going to go through today is talking about what responsible use looks like whilst we're looking at examples. Now, what would you like the next 30 minutes or so to look like, as well as your questions? I'm really happy to, like I said, to bounce off things. Would you like just me to deliver slides? Would you like me to build stuff with you, as in you put in requests and I say, yep, okay, let's have a look at what AI can do in this? Or would you like a mix? Just I'll respond to what the crowd would like. You will get any copy of the final slides, which I've only just finished finalizing because I keep changing my mind on things. So I'll show you how I've developed that as our first activity. Okay, cool. Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so we've got a bit of a dominance of the mix there. Thank you so much. But like I said, we will. I've got some slides for you and things that I'd like to point out. But I will do a bit of a mix. Okay, so if you've got ideas about what's really troubling you or exciting you about AI and you want to throw those into the chat and we can have a conversation about that, great. So here's 4 possible options about what you'd like to talk about, and I'll try and come back to those if you like. Would you like to focus on leveling up your prompting? You just maybe people who haven't had much of a go at it would like to see what prompting actually looks like and how we change that. Would you like to talk about assessment? There's a few votes for that already. Admin habits, some things that I do perhaps, or ways that we use AI to manage some administration tasks, and careers planning is another option. We've got so many ways we could have this conversation, right, folks? But I'm very happy to be guided because there's so much we could actually talk about. All right, another 10 or so seconds on that one, just to punch in your preferred area. Assessment seems to be a big one, which of course it is. All right. Few more seconds on that one. Assessment seems to be a big one. Okay, cool. Thank you very much. All right, so we'll try and cover off, maybe we'll start with a little bit of prompting and then we'll go into the assessment conversation and we'll see how we go from there. All right, so thank you so much for sharing all of that. That was very, very useful information. So we know we're from a range of different contexts. We know that we've got a range of different positions on AI. We know that our organizations may not have a clear position that we can adhere to. And also we know that we want to explore a whole bunch of things. So that's great. Most people in the world, though, do this. When it comes to AI, this is the start of the sort of presentation-y part, by the way. Get your questions and thoughts ready and throw them into the chat or the Q&A. This is what most people think of when they think of AI in the world at the moment. They think ChatGPT, and in fact, I'm in my company organization account. They think this one, all right, where it's just your account personally, where you're signed into an email of some sort, and you've got this interface, right? That's what most people in the world still think of as AI. Because they haven't maybe been introduced to anything else. So if this is your first experience of the conversation or having a look at what AI can do, these are some key features of it. This is your prompting area, and I know many of you already know this sort of stuff, but bear with me because this is where the machine understands what you want. So if you don't put something into this prompting area, into this interface here, the machine can't help you. All right, it can't read your mind. It's not actually guessing at the moment. If you've just signed in for the first time, it's not connected to any of your other systems. It doesn't know you. It doesn't know any sort of chat history. So you have to actually tell it what you want. So most people go in, and I can tell you some students go in and say, write me an essay on X, okay? Whatever the topic happens to be. And it is quite amazing. The Australian, all right, whatever it is, they've got a topic that they've got to address, and they go in and say, write me an essay. Now, you haven't told it how long that essay is. You haven't told it what focus you want it to take. You haven't told it what structure it needs to have. So this is what I call kind of dumb prompting, where you're hoping that the AI does a whole bunch of things for you. Now, it is quite intelligent. Now, I've got the paid version as well. So I've got the paid version, and also we have a whole bunch of chat history here where it kind of knows what I like and what I want over time, but it's also guessing what I want. So it's guessing about the introduction structure. It's guessing about the number of paragraphs, the wording. It's guessing the level of language that I want it to do, but it guesses pretty well. And because it's been being developed for more than 4 years now, with all of us helping it, it is actually quite good at giving a response, even in the free and open version. So if I did the same thing in a chat version, and I don't even have to log in, and I say, write me an essay on the Australian industrial landscape. Okay, let's see what happens. So it goes, certainly, blah, 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 blah. So I'm not logged in. I'm not paying for anything. I'm just a person who's gone on, and it's done this for me. So I've said, give me an essay on this, but it's actually given me subheadings, which I wouldn't normally expect in an essay scenario, right? It's given me bullet points down here, which I wouldn't normally expect in an essay, maybe in a report, but not an essay. It has given me a conclusion of sorts, but that's not exactly what I'd expect for an essay. And so if I just went copy paste, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get any sort of top marks if I just did that bluntly. But what I'd have to do as a student, if I did want to perhaps submit that, is I'd take out the bullet points, I take out the subtitles, maybe check it just to see if it's correct. But also I haven't put a question in, so it's just giving me this massively generic response. But that's how most people use AI at the moment. So I don't know if that's your experience so far, where we put in a sentence or a part of a sentence as the prompt, and we go in, and that's the sort of response we get. Now, what most people don't do is realize that you actually have to drive this. It is a machine. So if you go in and you say, write me an essay on the Australian industrial landscape, let's see what happens when we just add a little bit more context. So we say it has to be 1,500 words. It has to only focus on technology industry. Oh no, let's go something else like the aviation industry. It needs to be clear, concise, and refer to recent major legislative or other changes. Whoops. Okay, even doing something like that, giving a little bit more context, is that you're able to start to drive the machine just that little bit more. So this is just still basic prompting as far as I'm concerned, but what you'll see is that it starts to actually search the internet if it wasn't doing it already, because what you've told it to do is focus on a particular industry, and to focus on major legislative or other changes. And so now the machine's like, right, I know a little bit more about what you want. And this can be for anything, folks. This can be for recipes if you want recipe ideas. This can be for purchasing a new car. People are using AI in all sorts of different ways across their life, but most of the time they're just doing that basic part or maybe one sentence of prompting. So and so this is what we get back is, I'm guessing we can check in Word, but it's building a 1,500 word-ish essay. Has it focused on the aviation industry? Yes, it has. Is it focused on any changes? Yes, it has. It's referring to more specific information now. And it's given us about the structure, competition, major recent changes. So it is responding to what you do, but unless you put the information in, it won't actually be able to do it. All right, so that's your basic prompting there, where you're starting to level up what it is you want and how you want it to work. Then what you can do is start to play with some of these other options here. So I might just start a new chat again. So we've got this basic interface here, but most people don't press this plus button. So if you press the plus button, what you do is you're giving yourself more options. Now you do have to be signed in, and you do get more options if you're in a paid or an organizational version. So if you're in your Microsoft Copilot at work, you will probably get a couple of options here about attaching files and things like that. But what you're actually able to do is go in and, yes, attach some files. So you can grab files like the session handout for this session, for example, and you can say, you know, give me an analysis on this if you have the right to do so. I should say, you know, copyright, etc. Please be respectful of that. But if you're in here and you're using a particular resource, let's use something else. Let's say maybe something like this. Okay, just a little infographic that I used. And you say, can you explain this to me in simple language? Okay, so now we're starting to go multimodal or multimedia. And most people in the world still don't do this, okay? They do not put different types of information together into a chat and try and get some sort of output. Can you explain this to me in simple language? I would like it in the form of a poem. All right, so remember, you're now telling it what output you would like. You're telling it what structure you would like. Do you want it as a speech? Do you want it as a poem? Do you want it as a song by your favorite artist? Do you want whatever it happens to be? So here you go. It's explaining how Copilot can read handwriting if you do it this way in the form of poetry. Great, wonderful. Is it useful to you? Possibly, possibly not. Maybe some of your learners need it this way because, you know, whether it's adult learners or children, it doesn't matter. Some of your learners will want this information in different ways. Maybe they prefer the infographic to a slab of text, and now they can do it themselves. And even without going to my slides and things like that, one of the stories I'll tell you today is that I was working with some senior students in a school in Victoria, and one of them sat me down and said, Matt, I want to tell you how I use AI. And she was saying that she goes to a product called Notebook LM, which I don't know if a couple of people mentioned Gemini, but this is a Google product. All right, so you can just go to notebooklm.google.com, and if you've got a Gmail account, paid, free, whatever, you can go in and create what are called notebooks. And what she does is she goes in, oh, hang on, wrong account. She goes in and why is that doing that? It's opening up my app on my device. Here we go. All right, so this is the app, by the way. I'm on a MacBook, so it looks fairly similar to the browser. But what you're able to do is go in, and so you can take you know, a document that you might have, etc., and you can go through and put in. Oh, let's use a different one. Let's use a. We go. Oh, no. I'll show you this one. Sorry. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, folks, but hopefully it'll be worthwhile. Okay. I wanted to show you this one for several reasons. We're going to get a bit meta. So someone asked me about the environmental impact of AI. So this is something maybe you can have a look at in the recording. I'm happy to send this link to you to this notebook, by the way. So this student, by the way, going back to that part of the conversation, the student was telling me the story how she takes all the resources from her class and she puts them here in Notebook LM on the sources side. Okay, she adds sources. She can use it from her device so she can find information online. She dumps all of that information from class into Notebook LM, and then she can have a chat with it in the middle. And by it, I mean the documents. So this chat here doesn't go off to the big digital brain of the internet through Gemini because it's a Google product. It just refers to the documents on the left-hand side. So it's like a closed library that it's referring to. So you can have a conversation here and say, you know, what are 3 leading impacts of AI? And because we're talking about environmental and economic costs, it'll look through this information here, see, scanning your sources and actually respond from there. So in your courses, for example, you might build a notebook with particular resources on the left-hand side and send the link to your students, your learners, and be able to do that. This could be part of your assessment preparation or something like that, where you're actually starting to use these different tools in different ways. So this is going well beyond normal prompting, right? But I thought I'd skip to this when I thought of it, because what she said was, this particular student, is what I get in class doesn't match my brain, and I need something different. And so she takes the resources that she's quite happy to take and look through from her teacher, but she just says, no, I don't process that information that way. Remember, this is a senior high school student telling me this. And so she can go in and ask the questions she needs to ask, have a look at the information in the way that does make sense to her brain. And then on the right-hand side here, and you have to go away and explore this, folks. If you haven't seen Notebook LM, you have to go and have a look at it, because what you can do is create, now let me sound, you can create things like, where am I? No, not a briefing doc, an audio overview, which is a podcast. And it might take a few extra minutes here, so I'll come back to it in a minute. But you can create audio overviews, which are podcasts. You can create video overviews, which are like YouTube informational videos, reports, quizzes, data tables, slide decks, mind maps, flashcards, infographics, and even in the free version, you can do a couple of these before you exhaust your limit for the day. And I've got the pro version here, so I've got extra goes at all of these things. But what you're able to do is create different types of resources for assessment. Like you can send out a podcast and have students listen to that live and then make a comment on it in a live examination style experience. There's all sorts of things you can do to shake up the assessment process a little bit using something as simple as this, which is fairly easy to access. So I just wanted to tell you that story because students are starting to use tools like this to personalize education for themselves. All right, so there's Notebook LM, which is really, really worth following up on because it's a multimodal in. You can put in websites and documents and PDFs and that sort of stuff and get out of it podcasts and infographics and all that sort of thing. I mean, ChatGPT is pretty good at whipping together infographics now, which is really handy. But if you don't ask for these things, you won't get them. And if you don't click this plus button and see what you can do, like create image or do deep research, which is getting it to go off onto the internet and do deeper research for you and other things here, then you're not getting the full use of these tools. So hopefully even for the frequent flyers in the room, maybe some of those ideas will come in handy as well. The other things just on this screen are the dictate button. So pretty much every AI tool that's out there has a dictate button of some sort. You press the microphone, you can speak into it. I guarantee some of your learners, some of your colleagues will benefit from that because if they're like my GP, who's a one-finger typer, right? We could save Medicare if my GP just used this particular function of AI. If you're a one-finger typer or just slow at typing, or you just prefer to speak, then you can hello, can you turn this into some sort of haiku about the same topic? So you just speak into it, it listens to you. It's really good at speech recognition now. And remember, I am in the paid version of this, but there you go. You get a little haiku about transferring the information into Copilot. But the point being that if you use the speech dictate function in some of these tools, you might be able to get even better results because you just talk to it about what you want. Talk to it about the problem that you've got, the opportunity that you've got, talk through what you actually want out of it, and it'll help. This button here is use voice, where you actually interact with it. Let's see if it's going to work. Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Matt. I hear you perfectly. What's on your mind?
Can everybody hear that, by the way? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear that? Somebody? Yep. Okay. Thanks, Adrian. Yep. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is explain how going beyond the basic one-sentence prompting in AI tools actually helps develop better learning resources, assessments, and other things for an education context.
When you go beyond simple prompts, you add context, nuance, and specifics, like giving the AI a clearer map. Instead of a bland response, it helps craft richer lesson plans, tailored assessments, or creative learning tasks that resonate more with students. In education, that means more relevance, deeper engagement, and often more meaningful.
Okay, you didn't come to listen to an AI talk to you, but that's what you can do, all right? And on your phones, you have that functionality too, and there's even a video mode where you can have it talk to you, but it can see the world through your camera. So there's all sorts of features that if you just try and go beyond that basic prompting, that you'll find other ways to engage with this, and different kinds of learners, different kinds of colleagues who need a different approach to this will find that particularly useful. Before I leave this and we talk a bit about assessment, I'd like you to consider when the next time you're using AI, these are even the high flyers as well, if you've not gone into this settings area, okay, hopefully all of you can see that settings area down the bottom left, and you click data controls. All right, if you have not done this in your personal AIs, please do it today, because what you probably will find is that this line here, so I've gone from settings to data controls, and I go to improve the model for everyone. Now, what that means is that if this is switched on, which it is by default, when you sign up to these tools, that means you are giving permission to that company to read all of your messages and chats. So if that is on, everything you do in ChatGPT, in Gemini, whatever it happens to be, can be read by the company, as in literally a human engineer from that company could read your chats because you've given them permission to do so. So I can't turn this back on again, okay, because, oh no, I can. That's terrible. But what you've got to be aware of is that the companies can turn this back on as well. So if after several months you get one of those, oh, we've updated our privacy terms or something like that, one of those things might be, hey, we've just turned this back on for you. Feel free to go in and turn it off. But, they don't actually tell you that sort of thing very, very obviously or overtly. So please go into your settings and have and tell your students as well, tell the people you train to go in and actually turn that off just as a safety precaution. Do I trust it 100%? No, of course not. That could just be a blue button that they've added there for my own, just to calm me down or something like that. But if you do that, then at least you're preventing some of that data from going beyond this particular account of ours. All right, so how about we chat about assessment? I know that a lot of people are worried about assessment, and I'm from a K-12 context, by the way. And I know that that it is different in different vet contexts and different higher ed contexts, but everyone is experiencing the revolution at the moment, and no one has any really concrete, there are no silver bullets in this world. Okay, I've seen students walk into a handwritten exam room with AirPods in their ear right up until they have to give in their technology at the door, and they've been chatting to their AI, like I just chatted to mine, through their earpods on the way to the exam room. So AI is having an influence on this as we go, even if we're trying to design around it. I'll give you a really simple example of something I've been working on, and so that you can see, and sorry, I know it's from a K-12 context, but I think it works everywhere, and it's simple so that you guys can see where I'm coming from the K-12 world, and you can convert it as you need to for adult education, if that's your bag. But basically, look, it's an assessment task, very typical handout assessment task. It's a research task. It's for year 8 in this case in New South Wales, and you put the outcomes at the start of course you do from whichever particular curriculum you're looking from. You give the task description, which is really clear. This one is a research report for a CSIRO researcher. And so students can choose from various questions if they want to, or develop one with teacher approval. There's the task structure, what you want the report to look like, etc., etc. Now, with the AI element of it, hopefully you can all see this. What was really interesting was in this particular place that I was working is that their approach to AI and assessment was open and closed tasks. So I don't know if you have this in your organizations, feel free to throw into the chat if you feel comfortable with what your particular approach to assessment is with AI. But in this particular school, it was, look, we have tasks which are closed and we have tasks which are open. So open tasks obviously can be as much AI as you like. Closed tasks are no AI. And I sort of went in and said, oh, we've got to be a bit more nuanced than that, I think, because even just a basic Google search now has AI summaries, which students can't even turn off in a lot of cases. So if that's the case, that AI is just there in so much of how they engage with information and research now, we've got to be a bit more nuanced. And so what we did working with AI, Claude in this case, was we said, okay, well, what if the steps within the task were open and closed? And in this case, this is Claude's interpretation of what we were talking about, by the way, is open steps permit the use of generative AI tools. When AI is used, you must be transparent, accurate, and provide proper attribution. So we can talk about citations and referencing if you want to in a little while. I'm not convinced we can do it practically, but we'll get there. This is the important part. Submitting raw, unedited AI-generated text is plagiarism. Raw, unedited AI-generated text. So it's really clear that if you do that thing I did earlier, where you just copy and paste and submit that as your work, even if you take out the subtitles, that's plagiarism. Right up the bat. Okay. Closed steps prohibit AI use entirely. These steps must be completed by you alone, either in class under teacher supervision through your own independent work. AI-powered grammar checkers and paraphrasers are also not permitted in closed steps unless specifically stated. I don't reckon anyone's had a go at Microsoft Word spell check or grammar check ever, except if students use those tools, what they're submitting isn't actually their own words, right? It's not actually the language they know. And we know when students submit work that they don't actually understand, they're using synonym switching or something like that. But this explicitly says that they can't actually use those things because we want to see what their vocab is like. We want to see if they're using the terms correctly as an indicator of their understanding. So what it's done is it's gone through each and every major step of the task and said whether it's open or closed. Now, the important thing is students can go back to this regularly, right, and say, oh, okay, open, AI permitted, I get it, I can use AI for this step. Oh no, this one's closed, and they're telling each other. And in K-12's case, parents are telling each other. This makes sense to me as a busy parent as well. When I see this on the kitchen table at night time, or if people have a tutor involved, or if people have, they're working in learning teams or study groups or whatever, it's really, really clear for everyone in the group what is and isn't allowed. And I haven't seen this in many, many cases. It's usually a traffic light on top of the whole task rather than being a bit more nuanced. In terms of assessment and the logging of AI use, like I said, it's really hard. I mean, what do you really care about, I suppose? What do you need to see in the marking criteria that is actually their work is where I'd probably land with. Otherwise, you might go insane trying to track absolutely every single step. But if you do have an AI use log, there's certain things that you might want to see. But I think the key thing is coming up in a second where it's the in-class verification. So this was really interesting, I thought, in terms of whatever the assessment looks like, whether it's a research task, whether it's an in-class essay, whether it's a speech, whether it's a performance, whether it's code, whatever it is, you as the educator or the trainer, the person who has to sign off and validate, to ensure authenticity, the student might or will, in this case, complete a short in-class verification activity after submission, or I'd say before or at any time, a brief oral Q&A with your teacher about your research findings, a short written reflection completed under exam conditions, and I'm talking like a 5-minute check, right? Where you just say, everyone in the class, here's one of the key concepts that everyone needs to know as a signal that you know the really core information. Write me a paragraph in 5 minutes on it. And I'll use that to compare to what you submitted to me as evidence of learning. And then explaining your data analysis process and conclusions, of course, in this particular assessments case. This verification contributes to confirming your understanding will be considered alongside your submitted report when determining your final grade. One of the biggest issues I see in assessment is that the organization, I should say, uses either AI detectors, which don't work often enough for me to be comfortable with them, or some other sort of black and white mechanism, which doesn't actually allow the student any kind of breathing room. And I know we've got to be practical about it, and there are so many pressures on your time. But I can tell you by having these sorts of things in those steps just before and in the process of submission means you will spend so much less time policing afterwards. Because that's what I see all over the place is people are policing, surveilling. Nobody is happy in those places. The educators and the trainers don't like it because they're seen as the police. The learners and the students don't like it because they're seen as the victim. And it is eroding trust across a lot of places at the moment if there's no practical, reasonable, fair process to just say, hang on a second, what you showed me 2 days ago really doesn't match what you've written in this. Can you just explain that to me? That 5-minute conversation where it's still open and it's still trusting and it's still supportive is way better than an email that comes through saying you failed this task because of AI has been detected. Because you then have to still follow up on all that process as well, right? So I don't care whether it's high school, primary school, vet, other higher ed, it doesn't really matter. It's all trying to maintain this trust between us when of course AI is in the mix, but we don't know what the impact is genuinely. And then in the marking criteria, what is actually in the marking criteria to say that we value certain things? Because, students are busy too. And if it's not in the marking criteria, do you care if AI had a role in it? Like you might, because it leads to another piece of knowledge or indicates another skill level or something like that. Cool, say that. And like I said, have these other components in the process to be able to say, okay, well, 2 weeks ago when you started the research, you really, really weren't thinking this way. Again, can you just clarify how that's changed? And that could be in the form of a short written reflection, which you then take away and use. But at least you're opening the conversation up instead of closing it down. Last couple of things on this one sort of importantly, most of the schools I go into, we haven't actually changed, or organizations, I should say, we haven't actually changed the assessment policy all that much because I don't care how students cheated, if that's the topic, okay? I don't care how a student cheats. I don't care if they've had a tutor do it, they've paid someone to write the essay or the speech, they've used AI to generate an avatar that does the live talk for them. I mean, I'm real, by the way, for what it's worth these days. But, I don't care how someone's pretending to be the person who you're validating. I just care that they have. And then it's a matter of, okay, well, what are the procedures after that? Well, the procedures are still the same. Like we're following up on, can you prove that you actually know and can do this stuff that you say you know and can do, and so on and so forth. But if there is that open conversation beforehand, the process becomes more of the focus rather than the final product. The final product still matters in a lot of cases, right? Like I'm sure in many of your cases, you actually really need the learner to actually be able to do that skill or have that piece of knowledge, because they're getting a qualification that other people, like all of us, need to rely on. So for them to actually be a qualified person in that space. And at the same time, what those things are maybe need to be clarified, promoted in the assessment task rather than just being in a list of a marking criteria. So academic integrity taken seriously, using AI in a closed step or submitting unedited AI-generated text will be treated as academic misconduct. In most jurisdictions, and forgive me, I can't remember what Test Score and other places have said, but essentially it's still malpractice. It's still collusion is one of the words. It's still it's still submitting work that's not yours. And to me, that is actually the key. Alrighty, so please do throw in some questions about assessment. So we've talked about, just going back, so we want to talk about leveling up my prompting, which we kind of skipped through pretty quickly. Assessment, we've had a little chat about, but if you have further questions, happy to answer them. Administration habits, okay. By this, I mean, can you organize yourself, or can you use AI to do some tasks faster, right? So I'm going to log into my organizational account for Microsoft Copilot. And I think most of you, if you wanted to hit the React button and do like a thumbs up for me of how many people use Copilot for work, I'm predicting that it's probably most of you. Yeah, we've got a few thumbs up. Got a few thumbs. Cool. Okay, yeah. I mean, most organizations, especially your administrative staff, use Copilot. Like there are very few organizations I've found that use Google as their like administrative core set of tools. They might use it in a teaching and learning sense, but not necessarily for the admin staff. Like I haven't met many finance managers or finance teams who use Google Sheets, for example, as opposed to Microsoft products. But in terms of Microsoft Copilot, the Gen AI app, couple of things for you to know. On the right-hand side here is where Copilot and Google Gemini and other enterprise level tools will show you that they have enterprise level protection. So if you don't have a little green shield or some other indicator that you are logged into your work account and that you are under enterprise protection, don't put anything from work in there, because it is actually outside your safe zone. In any organization, whether it's TAFE or anywhere else, schools, whatever, if you click that button, you should be able to get some information on how your data is protected. So basically what this little shield means is that anything I put in here, any chats that I have, any files that I attach, etc., are as safe as saving it to my OneDrive or my SharePoint within this account. That's Microsoft's promise. All right. So when I do my prompting here, it's as safe as saving a file to OneDrive or SharePoint. So in terms of administration, what we do when we level up from the individual one-off prompting is you start to do, what I recommend is that as teams, not just individuals, but as teams, you start to come up with prompts that work for all of you about particular things. So you might have a prompt, something along the lines of something like this. Okay, I'll show you, I'll zoom in a little bit. Hopefully you can see that all right. So this actually goes to role prompting. So role prompting is where you tell the AI to act as someone. So you can say act as a finance expert, act as a marketing specialist, act as, in this case, an expert learning designer who has a deep understanding of whatever. You need then tell it what you need, then give it more context, then level up. Okay, this is like a multi-level prompt, but what my suggestion is that you talk with your teams, and if you have a team, and if you don't, give me a call about whether this is a really useful prompt for more than you. Because if you can set up even just a shared Google Doc or Microsoft Word document, and you can just start to build a prompt library that is of great administrative use, because then when someone else has to do that same task, you take that prompt away and you start to work out which are the best prompts. Now, this does change sort of month to month, so just a fair warning that sometimes the prompts do have to be updated, but that's one strategy, is to start to build a prompt library. And I literally just mean like a basic spreadsheet, a basic Word document where people are putting their prompts in and they're saying this is what the output is. And by output, I mean this stuff, the stuff you get out of it, and you can share, sorry, not down there. You can share the output of most tools by going share, that sort of share button, where you should be able to, yeah. So it's created a link which you could put into that prompt library as well. All right, and then so that people can see how and when that's useful. The next level up, which I'm hesitant to talk about because we've only got a little while left, but if you go from the basic prompting to more complex prompting, another level is to create a little bot for yourself. So bots are smaller versions of this environment where you teach it what to do. Okay, and it does that one thing for you. Now, frustratingly, in Microsoft, and if Microsoft's listening, you know, I am frustrated by this, because in ChatGPT, okay, these bots, I'll switch to my other one. In ChatGPT, these bots are actually called, oh, we've got agents there now, but they're called GPTs. Okay, so GPTs are small versions of ChatGPT that do a particular thing. So you can go, and what have we got? An AI human. Oh, some of your students will be using this, by the way, to get around all your AI detectors. Okay, they'll go into something like an AI humanizer, and they'll have their AI generated text, and they'll put it into a humanizer, and it will humanize the information in that particular text. So I was chatting to a student in, I think he was in about year 9, who was saying, this months and months ago, who was saying that he takes the AI generated text of a subject he doesn't like, super honest, subject he doesn't like, and he puts it into 4 different AI humanizer websites, and then takes the final product of that 5th output and submits that. So there is no way that any AI detector can actually detect where it's come from, or that it is all AI, because he's actually, like, he puts so much effort into cheating. I'm just like, mate, why didn't you just do the task? Anyway, but he's really utilizing these tools quite well, ironically. So anyway, ChatGPT, GPTs, this is a small version of ChatGPT that just does one thing. It humanizes AI outputs. And you can build your own little GPT, okay, I'll go back. So you go to Explore GPTs if you have it in your account, and you can create a GPT up on the top right here, and you can give instructions to this little bot to do a particular thing. All right, so what that looks like is, oh, where's my, no, all my GPT's gone. Okay, let's say Academic Assistant Pro. Oh, no, that's not what I want. Sorry, folks. I'll go back in. I'll create one straight away. You can go create, and you can actually just go to create and tell it. Like I said before, you can just tell it what you want. Let's have a look. Hi, I'd like a GPT that helps vet educators in Australia to track the various skills that they're teaching in a particular course and be able to generate individualized profiles for their students, or in fact have students develop their own profiles based on having a conversation with that bot about that course. So of course you can type it if you prefer to type it, but I'm just a bit lazy at the moment. Also, I want to show you the capabilities, of course. So you go in and you don't use natural language. Don't necessarily think you have to prompt in really, really specific terms. Just use natural language. And so here's what it's done for me. What's it doing? Come on. So it's calling it the Vet Skills Profiler. Does that name work for me? Yes, thank you. And so what it's doing is, in the background, it is configuring. Okay, this is the other little window here. It's configuring and giving instructions like you would prompt one off, but it's telling this little bot what it should do and what it shouldn't do. And so what you're able to do is say, okay, no, I don't. I just want it to do web search. That's great. Okay, so it's given this Vet Skills Profiler, which it's even done the little picture for you, which is great. And you go, okay, here's the description, which comes up here. Here's the instructions, which the user doesn't see. It just sits in the background. Okay, so instead of it being just generic ChatGPT, this GPT will do these particular things. So now when I have a look on the right-hand side, it goes, okay, create a student skill profile template. And because it's following are these instructions that we've given it, it should actually say draft a learning profile student, so here's your draft profile. But see, I don't, and of course this is the first go, right? So it's not going to be perfect. But what I didn't obviously do is say you must ask the user questions before you build the thing. Okay, so that's where these instructions are really, really important to clarify exactly what you want. But you can just keep building it. You can go back and forth and change these instructions. It's just a preview until you're ready to create it. And then you can create, you don't have to share it at all. And then it should be sitting in your little GPTs. So that's in ChatGPT, and they're called GPTs. Like I said, it's really frustrating because in Microsoft, they're called agents. So you can build yourself a lesson planner agent, for example, or a meeting preparation agent, or a report comment agent, or an individual learning plan agent, or whatever. And it can connect to other platforms and things like that as well, if you have access to those other platforms. Homework Hero, individual learning plan agent, prompt coach, so you can use AI to help you to use AI. Like I said, we're getting a bit meta here, and you can create an agent just like in ChatGPT, as I just showed you. You just talk at it and say, this is what I want, and it'll help build it. And you can do the same thing in Gemini, except of course it's called something else. In Gemini, they're called gems. So not now, you can go away, thank you. So what I want to do is, where am I? Oh no, I'm using a free version. So they might not pop up on the left-hand side here, but this is where the gems would pop up on the left-hand side. So some things look similar in all of these different platforms, but some of them don't. Alrighty, so that was the, so in terms of administration habits, when we go into these tools, it may be that we go, okay, this is a task I'm doing every single day that I need help with every single day, or that my colleagues need help with every single day because you're the lead, like you're the AI frequent flyer. Okay, so you go, hey, I'm going to build a GPT for you, or an agent for you, or a gem for you, which does the thing you keep asking me about. And we're going to load in all of our previous conversations. We're going to load in as much instruction as we can. We're going to upload files, so we give it a knowledge base, so it sticks to particular things like a particular curriculum, a particular subject area, a course, certain standards, whatever. You can pop those into the knowledge base, and then then you can give them the GPT, which they then talk to. And so it's saving you time, it's saving them time, because you've got a GPT there to help them build the thing that they need to build. So you've got prompt libraries, and you've got these bots in different tools, which you're able to build fairly easily. And in somewhere like in Claude, they're called skills. I probably won't dive into Claude. Claude's my favorite at the moment, by the way. My wife thinks I'm partnered up with Claude. It's not that serious. We're still platonic. But Claude is absolutely an amazing tool, but maybe that's for another time because we've only got about 10 minutes left. So just checking the chat. Okay. Alrighty, so we've got a little bit of assessment conversation, which you can ask questions about in the last 10 minutes if you want. Please do jump into the chat and ask. We've leveled up prompting a little bit. And what I might do actually is just show you one thing I used at a school. Where are we? Just yesterday. Okay, here you go. If you want to take a screenshot or a little mobile phone shot of this one. What we started off with was that basic zero shot prompting, okay, where you just put in one thing and you get one thing back. It might be a really sophisticated thing you get back, but it's just still the one thing with no examples or no structure or anything like that. A few shots is where you say, okay, now I want you to do it in this way. Here are a couple of examples, and it will fit that template. Chain of thought is where you start to work with the AI. So you say, here's the first thing I get back. Yeah, that doesn't really look right. What I want is this, and I want it branded this way, etc. And you start to do a chain of thought. So you actually have a chat with the chat bots. Role prompting I mentioned earlier, which is where you give it a persona and you say, be the marketing expert, or be the person I have to convince about this particular initiative, or whatever it is, so that what it does, you're telling the machine to focus on particular information in its brain. So if you say be a you know, a mobile phone technician. I don't know, be a mobile phone technician, it will cut out all the history stuff and the literature stuff and all sorts of other things from its search parameters in its own brain and just focus on what you need. Structured output, really, really handy. Like I said, if you want it in a particular way, tell the machine you want it in a particular way, and it will. And then prompt chaining is where you get a little bit towards that bot level of conversation where you say, okay, I actually need to work in multiple prompts, like big prompts, essay length prompts in some cases, to really get to the final product. And you might say, hey, now give me all of that as instructions for a bot, which you can put into one of those GPTs or agents or gems. So those are 6 prompt types that you might want to follow up with. And careers planning. Okay, might chat just for a couple of, I know many of your students might be worried about their future. I certainly hear that in every engagement I have, is that students are worried about jobs, and not necessarily that industries or jobs that they want to be at in 10 or 15 years will disappear, but what's happening is, of course, that we're seeing more and more the graduate roles are disappearing because companies are saying, well, I've got Claude, so I don't need 10 interns for this particular year. I need 1 with Claude. And students are seeing that. Like it's different in Australia to perhaps other jurisdictions, but they're seeing that and they're starting to say, well, what is the future for me? And whilst we don't necessarily have conversations about that, I think one area, not necessarily the only area, but one area is that they do have to start engaging with these tools because they are getting quite powerful. And it is still the case that the people who have both the domain expertise and experience, which is that whole doom loop of how do I get experience until I get a job that allows me to get the experience, but you know what I mean? That combination of expertise and experience and AI is an amazing combination to have. So just like in your roles as well, is if you can just start using AI in some of these different ways to explore different opportunities, it does make a difference. It does hopefully save some time, but also expand opportunities because you can start to explore different things. Alrighty, so, and happy to answer questions on that front too, even though we've only got 6 minutes left. Ian, I use Claude. Is there a command to humanize Claude outputs? That's something you have to work with your Claude on. So you can go into this area called customize. Okay, and you can either give it skills. So like what we were talking about with bots, this is how Claude has sort of interpreted that. So you can create a skill which has instructions within it. So this is the brand skill for the Educator Intelligence platform that we've launched. So it's got all the brand spec in there. And so anytime I go into Claude and say, hey, I want to build this for Educator Intelligence, it builds it with the branding in mind. So some of you might be in roles where you have to do branding all the time, and that's a really, really handy one. And Claude in particular is quite good at that. And Claude Design, if you've got a Claude account and you haven't looked at Claude Design yet, which is just claude.ai/design rather than just claude.ai, but if you go to claude.ai/design, it's like having a design team with you. It is just extraordinary once you set it up properly. Happy to follow up with that. But what am I looking for? Down to, no, not design, down in your settings. Okay. Oh, yep, here, sorry. So see here, I've got instructions for Claude. Okay, so Claude will keep this in mind across chats and co-work. And so what you could do in there, Ian, is actually put some instructions there about how you would like it to speak, what sort of language you'd like it to use. You can say, you know, don't use M dashes, don't use this kind of language structure and that sort of stuff. And it usually obeys it. Different tools, different abilities, and different payment levels also affect how intelligent those sorts of things are. So don't know if that helped, but hopefully that's something there. And thanks, Anthea, for putting that in there as well. So writing better prompts. Thank you so much. How can we integrate the bots developed by AI in our LMS? So yeah, depending on what your LMS is, like the obvious ones are Google Classroom connected to Gemini, and if you're using Microsoft Teams as your LMS, then Copilot is there embedded in those different systems. Canvas, a lot of you would probably be using Canvas despite recent unfortunate events. Canvas has got AI built into it if it's switched on. And thanks, Kalpa as well for popping in for Moodle and Accelerate. Not sure on that front, but I'm sure every single LMS now either has a native AI that's being integrated into it, or a plugin via API, something like that, where you can connect in various tools. And increasingly, things like Claude are being allowed to be cross-pollinated, if you like, in those different systems. And even then, if it's like, say, maybe Kalpa, I don't know if all of you do SCORM packages for your courses, for example, online, but Claude in particular is absolutely able to build really quite interesting, like probably not on the level that you're able to design yourselves, but really quite interesting HTML and SCORM packages, certainly that impress me, a lowly user like myself, and being able to be imported into those different systems. So yeah, there's even if it's like a manual kind of create the SCORM in Claude, download, then re-upload, there are ways to do that as well. So look, we've only got a couple of minutes left. Anthea, so thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Does anyone have any final questions, comments, challenges, provocations? No? I know you've all got many different places to go. But yeah, if you'd like to get in touch, I'll just pop my email into the chat.com. There we go. Finally managed it. So it's just matt@nextwordnow.com. And you can have a look at nextwordnow.com and see what else we do. But yeah, hopefully that was useful. And I know some of you are all over some of the prompting stuff, but hopefully the assessment stuff made you think, and vice versa, and that you all take something away from this session. So, and thanks so much for having me as part of the Ignite Ed journey. Thanks, everyone.